Hey guys, I'm Yegi Shatini, and today we're going to go over how to add subtitles using Wise and Unreal Engine. Now, this isn't going to be a Wise integration tutorial, so if you're interested on getting this Wise browser here in Engine, then just ask below or look up a different resource. So once you're integrated, that's when you get all your events. Now, the actual events I'm using here, it's only 3 things. Ignore all the default stuff. Really, I just have my test events. So let's look at them inside of Wise. I just made a voiceover work unit here, and then inside of it, first let's look at the simple one. I just added one line of dialogue.
That scream. It sounds like it's in pain. But I have to keep going.
All right, and then I added that as a test subtitle VO event that's just playing that. So let's take a look at that one first. Pretty simple here. So in Engine, right, I added my test subtitle VO into my Engine folder, and then I have it triggering.
That scream. It sounds like it's in pain. But I have to keep going.
All right, so adding the subtitle itself, you really only need 2 things. You need the widget, which shows the subtitles, and then you need the thing to actually post the subtitle itself. So if we take a look at the widget, right, all it is a canvas panel with a text block. Now, the important thing here is the text block needs to be set to is variable, so make sure that's checked in the top over here in the details panel. And then whatever you label this as, for me it's subtitle text, just remember that because we have to reference it in our other blueprint. Now, all this other stuff like your anchor point, your font, your text size, all of this is going to be transferred over to whatever it's reading from Wise. So make sure whatever settings you want to match your game, you're setting that up in here. Now, I just have mine default and then centered on towards the bottom of the screen. There's nothing in the event graph. This is literally just kind of choosing your default text here. You'll notice also I removed the font, or I removed the text inside of this because whatever text you have written here is going to kind of show for a frame, and we want to avoid that. So here I left it blank. All right, now inside of the blueprint, right, for me it's just the sphere. So I made a sphere with a collision box around it. On this collision, I made an overlap event. Now this overlap event, once my character overlaps with this blueprint, I am creating my widget, right, my subtitle widget. I am setting it as a variable. You need to do this. And then, well, to keep it clean, you need to do this. I guess you can drag that out later, but you need to set it as a variable and then add it to your viewport. So this is just simple widget stuff to put it on screen. And then I'm posting my subtitle event. Now, this is the Wise node, right? My post event node. Make sure you put your correct event inside of here. And then I'm using callback masks. In here, I have the end of event mask on as well as the markers. And then from post event callback, right, if you drag off, you can add a custom event and then name it whatever you want, right? I already have one here, but I'll walk through it again. So you make your subtitles event, and then this is when the actual stuff starts happening. So for your callback type, you want to switch on AK callback, right? So this is what lets you call back to any of these things up here. You have a ton of options. Since we're using VO and it's not music or anything, really we again only care about end of event and marker. Whatever you're using, you need to have checked in here. So for my end of event, right, this one's simple. End of event, the subtitles are done. I don't want to hear this anymore. I'm going to remove all widgets. That's it, right? That just deletes it from the screen. Marker is a little more complicated here because I need to cast. It'll be easier from here. So the callback, I need to cast to AK marker callback. All right, so once you're cast here, this is what lets you actually read what's in the marker, right? Or whatever you want to call back from the marker. In my case, we want the marker label. That label, if you go back to Wwise, is literally just whatever you type in the marker, right? Edit label. It's a little confusing considering it's called a marker, but then you double click and edit label. So this is what you type, and that's what will show up in Engine. So this label is going to have what we want to see. Now we need to put it somewhere, so we get our widget that we set up here. From here, we want to get subtitle text. Now again, this is whatever you set your text variable to be in your widget itself. Once you have that subtitle text, set text. That's it. You have your text set, and then what do you want to set the text to? Of course, we want the label, right? Whatever we typed in our widget. So that's all it really takes to do this. I'm going to delete it now because I have it literally right over here. Rehook up my event. And that's it, right? So again, you have your callback event from your masks, your marker, and the end of event. At the end of the event, it's going to remove the widgets, and then boom, here you just read the label of the marker and then set that to be your text. All right, so let's take a look at it in here as we walk up to it.
That scream.
This is just a test. That's
Sounds
what
like
I
it's
set
in
the first
pain.
marker to.
But I have to
This is
keep
another
going.
test. That's the second marker, and then it deletes itself at the end of the event. Now, what's nice about this is if I go back and say I changed the line completely, I'm keeping the same event, but let's say I made a typo, and this, oops, I messed up. I fixed it. I didn't need this marker. Right, you can move these things around and change them, and so long as you go back and generate, you go back in Engine.
That scream. It sounds like it's in pain.
There you go. Your subtitles are updated. Now, if we look at making a sequence, right, if you have some sequential order of VO that you want to play, it's the same exact process. In Engine, you'll notice here I made a second set of spheres to show the sequence. These are both the same things. I just dragged off of it. But the blueprint itself is exactly the same. It's just using a different event, right? My play sequence VO, but everything down here is identical. And then, don't be confused here. I just collapsed it. But all of this is exactly the same as the other VO. You'll just see here.
Seoul isn't like the human world. It's a place of music and magic.
It's my first
a place
event.
of peace.
And then the second part of the sequence.
The Keel never mentioned all this being underneath Dairei's tree for 1,000 years. I guess they didn't think I needed to know.
That was the second one. Now, sequence container, I just put the second sphere here because
Seoul isn't like the human world.
It triggers again.
It's a place of music
I only have
and
two
magic.
things in the sequence,
place
so
of peace.
that's why I reset. But then I could come back here, and
The Keel never mentioned all this being underneath Dairei's tree.
as long as it's playing the same event, it's going to sequence to the next thing. So if we look inside of Wwise, because that's the only difference, I made a sequence container. Right click, new child, sequence container, and then let's delete these so you can see it. I imported these two lines of VO, and then I just drag in my sequence as I want them to play in order. Now again, if I had 20 things here, I just drag the 20 things in, make sure they're in the right order, however I want it to play.
Seoul isn't like...
The Keel never...
And it's always going to go from the top one to the bottom one. You'll notice I made a reset VO container, or a reset VO event. Let's say you had 30 lines of VO, and at some point you needed to reset it back to 1, before you got to the end of the list, then you just have to make a separate event to reset the VO. But yeah, that's it. So then inside of each of those, I have the same exact thing as I did before. I just have a marker with whatever subtitles I want to play in the label, have that for the next one, and then that's it. Functionality wise, it works exactly the same as the other single shot VO. I just like having sequence containers because as long as the VO is going to trigger in sequence, then it's nice to only have one event and not have to have a bunch of separate, audio events cluttering up and, making folders and all that. But that's it when it comes to adding subtitles with Wwise and Unreal Engine. So if you have any other questions, leave them down below, and I'll see you next time.